Under Reagan, in 1987, the Fairness Doctrine was eliminated. Radio and TV stations were no longer required to air opposing viewpoints. This is partially responsible for the rise of right-wing radio. All the time, from coast to coast. The vice chairman of Clear Channel is Tom Hicks. In 1998, Mr. Hicks purchased the Texas Rangers baseball team in a deal that made President Bush a multimillionaire. Clear Channel banned Dixie Chicks songs because the lead singer criticized the president on the run-up to the war.
A famous, middle-aged rock and roller called me last week to thank me for speaking out against the war, only to go on to tell me that he could not speak himself because he fears repercussions from Clear Channel. They promote our concert appearances, he said. They own most of the stations that play our music. I can't come out against this war.
Why didn't we find out more about that bill before it was passed?
Well, because who's going to report on it? The media?
According to Bill Moyers, during the Senate debate, Senator John McCain said, "You will not see this story on any television or hear it on any radio broadcast." Altogether, the three major network news shows aired a sum total of only 19 minutes of coverage on the Telecommunications Act over the course of 9 months.
When a consumer group called the Consumer Federation of America got some money from the long-distance phone companies, who were also, for their own different reasons, opposed to the bill, they tried to buy a 30-second spot on CNN saying that this concentration of power in the hands of a few companies would cause cable TV rates to go through the roof and phone rates to go up, and CNN would not even accept their money. They wouldn't even let a consumer group, a dissenting group, buy their way in to the story.
Each time a new communications technology has emerged, a few companies soon gain total control over it. Will this happen with the Internet?
Well, up until now, the Internet has been governed by a system requiring open access. The telephone network on which the dial-up Internet is based has been a common carrier, has been open, so anybody could have a website, anybody could transmit anything, and you could have all kinds of companies competing to provide you with Internet service. Open access is being replaced now by a system of closed access. So companies like AOL Time Warner and Comcast and Paul Allen's Charter, they're opposed to any kind of open access rules. They say, we want to control Internet delivery.
I'll tell you something that I remember in the late 70s, that there were all these people who were like, cable television as panacea. It reminds me a little bit of, oh, the web will solve every problem. We'll have a level playing field where your new website will be able to compete with Disney and Murdoch and Viacom's new website. No.
Michael Powell has ruled that the cable companies are not subject to the open access rules. The future freedom of the Internet is in doubt.
You know, one of the myths of our society, you've probably heard this one, is it's based on competition. Have you heard that? That's the sort of pablum they feed us, the bottom fish. The truth of the matter is at the top of the system, the key to the system is crushing competition. So what we've seen in media, in all the sectors, you've had fewer and fewer companies. The largest companies buy the small companies. They try to get bigger and bigger and make it harder for new companies to enter. Because once you have just a handful of companies dominate an industry, the ability for someone to enter the industry as a newcomer is almost impossible.
I think there are lots of ways that you make news more profitable, and it doesn't make for better news.
If you ask the reporter, are you interested in truth, of course they'll all say yes. If you go to journalism conferences, which I do quite a bit of, everyone is looking for the truth. The problem is the gatekeepers of truth are not the reporters, they're the owners. And they're the lackey editors who work for the owners. And they'll decide what flies and what works and what pays the freight in terms of the advertising and the numbers. They'll be watching those numbers, and those numbers better be up or they'll get a new anchor.
The thing that we base our coverage, is it a good day or is it a bad day, is the numbers. I mean, I wish we didn't have to rely on that so much. I wish there was some way that you could base your job or a performance on something other than the numbers. Unfortunately, that's not the climate right now. You look at news directors who get hired, because those are the ones that are really on the chopping blocks. I think their jobs are less secure than Major League Baseball managers.
That's not news. That's marketing. That's something else. I never heard of doing news based on going for some demographic. You do the news. Call me crazy, but that's what you do. You investigate something because it needs to be investigated, or someone's clearly lying, or there's some issue of the public trust that needs to be looked into. You don't do it because you think some demographic will particularly enjoy the story. I mean, that's nutty.
And it's the underlying theme of all the great laments we see, of all the journalists you talk to now. We're so appalled that the public service they entered has become a purely commercial activity.
A pundit is defined as a learned person. According to James Fallows, in his book Breaking the News, pundits are celebrities, telling us what to think of events. Howard Kurtz, the media reporter for CNN, said, quote, "The culture of news has merged with the relentlessly glitzy world of entertainment, producing one great roaring ooze of headlines and hype." Margaret Carlson of Time magazine said producers want people who can sound learned without confusing the matter with too much knowledge. I'm perfect. Jeff Greenfield of CNN said, "We're booked as entertainers. We know what we're being paid for. We are being paid to fill seats." FaceTime on television translates into big-time lecture fees. According to Brian Lamb of C-SPAN, the message from Washington in the last 20 years is that everyone does everything for money. George Will said, "If you pick your audiences carefully, you can give the same speech every time." McLaughlin said, "It's important to go on the road, where you'll get to hear the whole range of views from the trade association." These speaking engagements are usually given to business and trade associations and paid for by corporations.
It's the whole essence now, almost, of selling some sort of regressive policy, like getting rid of Social Security or environmental regulations, is to dress it up in some name that suggests just the opposite. So if you're going to try to get rid of environmental regulations, you call your group Save the Environment. That's the name of the group that's trying to get rid of the regulations.
When Reagan vetoed the Fairness Doctrine, he said it was inconsistent with the tradition of independent journalism.
It's what Orwell would call the politically euphemistic language that is used by everyone, by politicians, but also by news anchors.
We live in an era now where media has become so used to accepting the spin and accepting the structures that they are given that they don't cover news anymore.
Can lies pose as truth? Winston had a friend at the Ministry of Truth named Syme, who was sure that they could. His job was to eliminate words. The aim was to narrow the range of thought by eliminating words that make real thought possible. There would only be good and evil. Everything that Big Brother represented was good. Everything that opposed Big Brother was evil. As Syme explained to Winston, the whole climate of thought will be different. There will be no thought as we understand it now. Orthodoxy means not thinking. One of these days, thought Winston, Syme will be vaporized. He sees too clearly and speaks too plainly. One day he will disappear.
You heard that 175,000 votes were not counted in the state of Florida. But it's not like everybody's vote counted or was not counted the same. The number of votes not counted was in direct proportion, county to county, to the black population of the county. So how could it be that, for example, in Gadsden County, 52% of the population is black and 1 out of 8 votes was not counted? 1 out of 8. Whereas in white counties like Citrus, almost all white, only 1 in 200 ballots was voided. How did this happen? And I go down to Florida. I go to Leon County. We're all looking at chads, you know, the guys looking at the hanging chads and all, and they make it sound like it's this big mysterious deal checking the ballots in Florida. A big hunk of Florida votes by paper ballot, which is read by machine. You know, if you ever took like the SAT and used those number 2 pencils, you stick it in the machine, you know, they read. It's an optical reader. So they had a practice voting machine set up in a supervisor's office in Tallahassee. And so I voted, took out my pretend ballot, and I voted for Nader, and I voted for Buchanan. And I stuck the Buchanan-Nader ballot into the voting machine. And it came back. I stuck it in again. Came back. I said, oh, hey, wait. I'm trying to vote here, and it won't take my ballot. He said, of course not. You marked it for 2 candidates. You made a mistake. It won't accept a mistake on the ballot. I said, what do you mean? All those votes were voided in Gadsden. Now, Leon County's a white county, Tallahassee. Gadsden's right next door to Black County. I said, oh, well, see, there's this switch. And in the black counties, like Gadsden, the same exact machines were set to accept ballots with errors. They would accept, you'd make a mistake on your ballot, very easy to do on a paper ballot, like you circle a name instead of check it off. The ballot's accepted, it's voided, your vote doesn't count. And in more of the white areas, it was set on reject so that if you made a mistake and you voted, it came back to you, you were given a fresh ballot, and you got to vote again.
And the losers in this were the American people, whatever your political views, because we all have a right to have the person who actually won the election take power. We all have the right to there be a fair count.
Helen Thomas, dean of the White House reporters, was quoted as saying that Bush is the worst president she has covered, the worst president ever. At President Bush's pre-war news conference, for the first time in 40 years, Helen Thomas was not allowed to ask a question. She had disappeared.
A chill wind is blowing in this nation. A message is being sent through the White House and its allies in talk radio and Clear Channel and Cooperstown. If you oppose this administration, there can and will be ramifications.
In the last several years, media corporations and politics have merged in a new way.
Murdoch is a brilliant man who, what he has done and has had a tremendous influence in the worst possible way on culture and on media in the United States and throughout the world. And what he does it in England and he does it in the United States. His shtick is appealing to working class people and taking them to the right. And he does this through violence. He does this through super patriotism. He does this through sensationalism. So what you have now, and I'll give him credit for this, Fox Television is the first major network that has no pretense. I mean, CBS and NBC, they have a pretense to objectivity.
Rupert Murdoch's Fox News Network is run by Roger Ailes. Ailes was the executive producer of TV for Richard Nixon. He was a consultant to Ronald Reagan and George Bush I. Tony Snow, a host, was a Bush speechwriter. The anchor, Britt Yoon, contributed articles to the ultra-conservative American Spectator. The phrase fair and balanced is repeated incessantly, like a mantra.
Fair, balanced.
Goebbels said, if you repeat a lie often enough, people will believe it.